San Diego Unified's 2018 budget includes cuts and layoffs. The graduation rate at San Diego Unified High Schools was astronomical last year. Even the small amount of funding to aid homeless students is in jeopardy from the Trump administration. And there's a move afoot to change the way school board members are elected. I'm Mark Sauer. The All Education Roundtable starts now. Welcome to our discussion of the week's top stories. I'm Mark Sauer, and joining me at the KPBS Roundtable today, reporter Megan Burks, who covers education for KPBS News. Hi, Megan.
Hi, Mark.
And education reporter Mario Coran of Voice of San Diego. Hi, Mario.
Hey, Mark.
Good to have you back again. And reporter Megan Wood of iNewsSource. Hi, Megan.
Hi, Mark.
A couple of Megans today. We'll keep that straight as we go. Well, we hear about deficits and teacher layoffs regularly about this time of year. Last year, though, a deal kept San Diego Unified teachers from getting pink slips. That tranquility is now a thing of the past, as anywhere from 800 to 1,500 teachers could potentially lose their jobs this year. So, Megan Burke, start with some of the reasons behind these financial difficulties this year.
Sure. So the district has been dealing with what they call a structural deficit. So pension and health costs have been rising, and they've also seen a decline in student enrollment, and students come with money. So they've had about 142,000 students in the year 2000, and in 2016 they were down to 129,000 students.
Okay, and that's significant. Again, that state money comes, or that money comes from the state, I should say, right?
Right. It's per pupil funding from the federal government and state.
Okay. Now, what is the current budget? Give us an idea of the scope there and how many people overall are employed.
So the budget is right around $1 billion. I'm not sure how many total are employed, but they have 6,000 teachers across all of their campuses, and they're looking to cut $124 million.
Okay. And so out of that, how many layoffs are we talking about? And we'll break down in a minute here what they're targeting.
So everything is still in flux, but the number is about 1,500 potential layoffs, but all of that could change.
Yeah, and as we've seen in years past, even in the Great Recession when things were really tough for school districts all over, a lot of these pink slips go up, but that doesn't mean that's the number that's actually going to get laid off if anyone gets laid off.
Yeah, they actually are required by law to at least give people a heads up that they may not have a job next year, so the number of pink slips that go out are always a lot higher than what actually ends up happening in the
Makes sense. They get in the lead time in March and all. So where specifically now are these proposed cuts to be made versus staff and teachers in the classroom?
Well, the district said that they wanted to keep class sizes the same, so they didn't really touch core subject teachers, and they said that most of the cuts, about $95 million, would come from the central office, but that's not just people working in the central office. Those are people who are dispatched out to school sites. So people who do occupational therapy with special education students, custodians, maintenance workers, noon duties who are really key to keeping kids safe and on the playground during lunch. Just all kinds of different professions that really do their work at the school sites, but aren't attached to that school's budget.
Yeah, so not technically teachers, but key support staff who are there on site and help people out.
Right.
All right, now what's the position of the San Diego Education Association, that's the teachers union, on the contract and what's led up to it? Their contract, which is in play right now too, and then this deficit.
Yeah, their contract will expire, so they're beginning to go into negotiations. They want to see raises. They want this instability of not knowing who's actually going to be in the classroom to end. They want class sizes even lower, and they say that this is possible and it's fair, and they really see the budget deficit more of just poor prioritizing and kind of ignoring caution from the governor to slow down spending. They say that there have been some pet projects and just kind of spending hasn't really kept pace with reality.
Okay. Now, Mario, I wanted to turn to you. You wrote about district schools facing the most layoffs all tend to be the poorest schools. Explain that for us.
Yeah. So we see that trend. We see when layoffs do happen that it's generally the poor schools in the district that have to shoulder the majority of the layoffs. And so we see that taking place this year. A lot of that goes back to the last in, first out policy, which by law the district has to follow, which says basically the last educator hired is the first one to be fired. So the sort of the seniority policies that place teachers in schools, generally that results in the younger or least tenured teachers being placed in the schools that are being placed in the poorest schools. So it stands to reason when there's time for layoff, they're the ones that get hit.
Is that because if you have some seniority, you have more of a choice and more of a say, and maybe teachers want to gravitate to different schools?
Yeah, exactly. Once a year, it's called a post and bid process where teachers get to apply to which schools they want to teach at and work at. And again, this is general data, but again, we see the trends holding pretty steady, not just here in San Diego, but elsewhere. Where when there's an opportunity, teachers tend to move where schools are more affluent, and there's a lot of possible reasons for that, but those are the trends that we do see.
Seems like one of them would be school culture. I mean, that's so important for everybody where they work, and if you're constantly having this shuffle of teachers at these lower income schools, of course people wouldn't want to stay there, so they would choose those more affluent schools. Yeah,
exactly. And a lot of things come into play, whether it's just easier to teach at a school with less poverty, that could be part of it, or if there's more stability there at more affluent schools, like you mentioned, that could definitely play a part.
Well, and the support from parents at home and the home life that plays right into what happens in the classroom, and that's just going to be more difficult when people are struggling with maybe a couple of jobs and difficult times in a poor neighborhood. That just all stands to reason, you would think.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about, we spoke a moment ago about declining enrollment. Now, there's a number of under-enrolled schools, and there's been the idea put forth that, geez, let's just close some of these schools and look at the money we could save. But there's resistance to that, right? But there's a number of them with just a few hundred students, right?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, I should say up front that it's not really an option there San Diego Unified is exploring at this time. I want to say about 10 years ago they were looking at this option. And so they ran an analysis, and they found that schools with 400 or fewer students, if we close those down, we could potentially save $400,000 a school. Now, it's like I said, it's sort of a non-starter because it's not a fun thing, and it's not politically popular to go around trying to close schools.
Those neighborhoods get very upset when...
Sure. People are attached to the schools.
They maybe move there because there's a school nearby.
Right. So, and for good reason, you wouldn't want to just close down schools willy-nilly, right? But here again, we're talking about a declining enrollment and schools that haven't really right-sized in the same time, or I'm sorry, a district that hasn't really right-sized its schools in the same time they were losing students. So though it may be an unpopular option, it may be a fiscally responsible option, but it's not really being explored right now.
Now, is there some hope that Governor Jerry Brown might come to the rescue with the state's revised budget come May?
There's always hope. I mean, all of these pink slips are based on the first draft of the budget, and then that changes as we know more about the economy. But the school district has said that even if that budget is rosier, they would still have to make more than $100 million in cuts. So it really wouldn't do much. They're also already looking at a budget deficit for next year.
Okay, and why does this seem to happen every year? Last word on this segment, but it just seems to come up over and over and over again. We just keep finding ourselves in the same place.
Well, I think that would depend a lot on who you ask. And if you ask San Diego Unified or the SDA Teachers Union, you'd probably get an answer along the lines of, well, the education system in California is just severely underfunded. And if we funded it properly, we wouldn't have to be making these tough choices every year. If you talk to somebody on the other side, they may say something like, well, you have to prioritize and you have to budget properly, and this is the San Diego Unified's own doing for not doing that.
Well, we'll see what happens here as the whole process plays out and how much money comes from the state and if the pink slips turn into layoffs later this year. We'll move on now. If you heard the brief story on the radio, it's all good news. San Diego Unified reported a whopping 91% of the class of 2016 graduated. Hooray! The superintendent, the school board members are breaking out the champagne, but there's more to the story behind the headline. So Mario, help us figure out what all this means and how do these classes play into this and how the rate is figured and all of that.
Sure. So as you said, 91.2% of the students of the class of 2016 graduated last year. So that made good on a prediction that school board members had made a year ago. They said that they were going to graduate 92% of the students, and they almost
pretty
got
close
there.
to that target. Yeah.
Right. So Not only that, but it's an all-time high graduation rate, and they did it last year for the first time under new graduation standards that were made more rigorous for the first time last year. So on its face, they have a lot to celebrate. It's true.
Yeah, but you would have thought that with more rigorous that would have hurt the rate, but it didn't work out that way.
Yeah, you would have thought that, and in fact, researchers from UCSD thought that too. They had looked at the data early on last year, and they predicted that there would be a drop in graduation rate, and again, it stands to reason that there would be. But what we see is there was a lot of stuff going on in that time.
So there's more to this headline, as I said, than meets the eye. So tell us about some of that. You've got the class offerings here. The district beefed up the college prep offerings and all, but then they measured it a little differently when it comes to graduation rates, right?
Right. So what we see, some of the things that were happening is, first of all, there were a lot of students leaving the district. And when those students leave the district, they are simply removed from the graduation rate. And then they're counted in the graduation rate in the district that they moved to. That's a state decision. That's something that's laid out by state law. But really what that means is that there were fewer students from the time students started high school to the time they ended, the graduation pool was much smaller. And so some of the students who left, the majority of them either went to charter schools or schools in other districts.
And these kids, a lot of these kids were struggling, right? They were behind and they weren't getting the best grades?
Yeah. We have been unable to get a complete data set of how many students who left were behind in credits at the time they left. We have a partial data set that says about 600 students were behind in credits at the time they left, and they were a year or more behind at the time they left. So those students leaving could have had a serious impact, or at least a notable impact, on the graduation rate. If they would have gone on to drop out or failed to graduate, it would have dropped the graduation rate, probably. I
see. Okay, and then the way that they were looking at certain grades in these tougher college prep courses used to be you had to have a C or better and to graduate, and that figures into it, and they changed that standard, right?
Yeah. So going back to the raised standards for graduation rates, this discussion started in about 2009. Activists were pointing out that, hey, look, you have kids graduating from some high schools that never had access to college-going classes. That's not right. That's unfair. So in 2011, the school board decided, okay, by the year 2000, they gave themselves a 5-year leeway to try to make adjustments within the district. But they said by the year 2016, every student who graduates from the district will have passed this series of college prep courses they call A through G courses. And so those classes are required to get into UC and CSU schools. And that was sort of the whole point of raising the graduation standards to begin with. But what they thought, and early on there were people that were saying, hey, if you raise these graduation standards, we're going to see plummeting graduation rates. Maybe it's not a good idea. So in 2011, the school board decided, okay, well, students can take these classes, but we'll allow them to count if they pass with Ds, so long as their overall GPA is above a 2.0. Okay. And that's great. I mean, these students now have had access to college-going classes, but we don't know how many of them passed with Ds, and in fact, only 59% of the students who graduated meeting the standards for UC and CSU schools. Okay, and so as we said at the outset, 91%, it's great, it is an achievement, but you really have to look at some of the details. Yeah, a couple seconds left on this segment. The bottom line, are more San Diego Unified students prepared enough to attend college or not, or is there any way to gauge that? I think they are. I mean, though we can compare the 91% who graduated versus the 59% who graduated meeting the college standards. That's still better than it was a decade ago or even 4 years ago when they first started this effort, 5 years ago. So yeah, I think we can decide that. But I think our response to it and our celebration should be a bit measured and in consideration of the context. All right. Okay, we're going to move on and talk about a different class of students. Many students, especially those from poor families, struggle in school. But what about kids who have no home to head to once the bell rings at the end of the day? Here's San Ysidro School District Superintendent Julio Fonseca describing what that's like for some of his students.
There's nowhere to do homework. There's nowhere where the families have to make their own food if they're living in such motels. And if they're living in cars, there's absolutely no way that we could expect them to come home, do homework, rest and relax, and then come back the next day.
All right, Megan Wood, now tell us how big, give us a scope on this program. How many kids are homeless here? And in a minute we'll get to the definition of all that.
Right, it's a pretty big problem. In the United States there's about 1.3 million homeless students, and that was back in 2014. So we can kind of expect that number has risen a little bit since then. In San Diego County alone, there's 22,000 homeless students, and this is under the McKinney-Vento definition, which is different than the HUD definition.
Okay, and that's countywide again. Yeah, that would seem to be a big number because, of course, we do a lot of stories and do a lot of segments on this show about homelessness, and that's much bigger than the overall homeless number in San Diego. So give us the definition of what we're talking about with homeless students.
Yeah, so homeless students don't necessarily live in the streets. So most of them are actually doubled up, which means that they're living with extended family or their family is living with another family, but it's based on financial need. Some students are living in cars, a lot are in motels and hotels, but a very small percentage are actually living in the streets.
And a lot of transients, I would imagine, moving from place to place, not a stable home for a long period of time. Okay,
Right.
So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the definition of students who are homeless. Now, what are the barriers that keep some of these kids from getting an education? What kind of assistance are local schools supposed to provide them?
Right, so the barriers are really just the basic necessities. A lot of kids don't have enough food, they don't have, a place to sleep, they don't have the clothes, transportation. So that's where the school is supposed to step in. They're supposed to provide tutoring, supplies like backpacks, school supplies, transportation to school, and just, the basic help like with, resources for their family as well.
Just basic necessities.
Right.
Now, there's some federal funding here. How much is available for homeless students nationwide in the current federal budget?
So nationwide, it's pretty small. It's only $70 million.
Which is really a drop in the bucket with the
It
looking
is,
at
yeah,
the federal
exactly.
budget. Yeah.
And California actually gets $7.5 million of that.
And we get the bulk of it because we've got more homeless kids.
Yeah,
or kids
about
who fit this
20%.
definition. Yeah, that's remarkable. Of all the states, California has.
Yeah, California has about 20% out of the unit.
Okay.
Everyone.
And in this county, how much of this federal grant money are we talking about?
So San Diego gets about $720,000. They did in 2016 at least. We don't know about 2017 yet. And that went to 4 districts because you have to apply. And 8 districts in San Diego applied last year and 4 were funded.
Okay.
So that includes the County Office of Education, San Diego Unified, Vista, and Santee.
Okay, and those are the only districts that got money?
Right.
Mario?
So I'm sorry if I'm skipping ahead here, but do we see fewer districts applying for those funds this year?
Right. So I can't speak to whether fewer did this year, but the application is really difficult. So writing a grant, is pretty difficult, but they need the resources. So you see a lot of smaller schools don't apply because, you need that staff to write a 15-page grant report, put in your proposals, your budgets, and everything. So it takes a lot of resources to get the resources.
Now, we've looked at Donald Trump's spending blueprint. Of course, that's not a budget here, a long way to go on the federal budget here. But there's cuts in many areas, big cuts to education. How might that affect the grants we're talking about?
Right. So he's proposed $9.2 billion in federal education spending cuts. And we don't know what that will do to this McKinney-Vento funding for homeless students, but it's really worrying people that we don't have a specific list where the cuts will go. So at least here in San Diego, we may see less districts getting the money. We don't know yet, but it's definitely
And as
worrisome.
we said in the first segment here, the districts are hurting for money, starting with San Diego Unified. I mean, how do you pick up the slack in all of that?
Right. So there is another source of funding. It's called Title I, but the districts really need to get creative here. So they have to exhaust all of their other resources before they can pull out of Title I. So they're going to have to work with the community. They're going to have to apply for other grants before they do that.
All right. Well, we'll see as the budgets play through and what happens to this money and what happens to these students. Well, San Diego School Board President Richard Barrera enjoys a re-election rate that would make some dictators blush. He's run unopposed. He's elected 3 times here, and he's done very, very well. So, Mario, start by telling us about the school board president and what's his background.
Sure. So Richard Barrera has been on the school board since he's run 3 times unopposed. I think his first year was 2009.
That sounds about right.
All right. So
a long time.
Yeah, right. And all 3 times he's gone on unopposed, and he is a central figure in San Diego Unified, not just on the school board, but I think in the whole district. He's sort of seen as the visionary, the guy with the ideas, and the guy that get things done. He's been known as a likable guy and just a good politician.
So tell us about his political background and his leanings and how that plays into to kind of keeping this powerful position all this time.
Sure. So, and I don't say it facetiously. I think he would say it himself. He is a union man. He sees that as he doesn't see as much of a conflict between his role with labor and his role in the school district. And he has a long history of organizing. He has in 2013, he was the secretary treasurer of the Imperial County Labor Board, which is the union of unions. And while he held that job, he was actually on the school board and was a key player while holding those two titles, those two duties.
And that's a good place to position yourself, because school board elections are unlike a lot of other elections here, because there's a big influence by who endorses whom, right?
Sure. Yeah. It is an odd and seemingly conflicting relationship, right? Because he is on the school board and he's sitting across from the teachers union with whom they're negotiating, right? So it seems on its face that it's a clear conflict. Now, I should say that he's no longer in that position. In 2015, he went over to the United Food Commercial Workers as an executive assistant, I believe he's listed as now. So that's not so much of an issue at this time. But for the 2.5 years that he was on that, they had gotten some outside legal counsel to say it wasn't a conflict, and really we haven't heard much about it in the past couple of years. Well, we wouldn't have heard about it now.
But if you get endorsement from the teachers union, a lot of voters just look at that and say, oh, well, teachers like this person, let's vote for him or her.
Yeah, especially if people don't know much, if they haven't done much independent research on their own. If they see an endorsement by the teachers union, that signals to them.
Very powerful in a race like that.
And I mean, these are big races, because in November they go citywide, and so a lot of people are just looking for some help. You know, these can't be small neighborhood races where you're going to get coffee and you're seeing your constituents and making the appeal, you know, while you're walking your dog or something.
Yeah, explain that for us a little bit. They're unusual in that sense among different races.
So the school
office.
district is broken up into smaller sub-districts, and in June there's a runoff within that smaller sub-district. But even if somebody won with well more than 50% of the vote, they still have to go to the citywide vote in November.
Okay, so quite a different thing. Now, there's been a move afoot to change the way we vote here. The city council weighs in. First of all, explain why the city council gets involved in the schools when they have a board and their own governing body.
Right. So the school board, the city council actually has, and the mayor have little to no involvement in the school district. However, the rules that govern school board elections are laid out within the city charter. So any attempt to change that would have to come from it would require an amendment in the
So
city
if they were
charter.
going to change the way that board members are elected, the city council and the mayor would get involved in that, right? Now, there's been a move afoot to do that,
Yes,
Megan?
some of them did try to get involved with that. The Republicans on city council urged the council president to bring it to the table for a vote to get a change on the next ballot. They wanted to set term limits, and they wanted to keep those local school district elections local instead of going to the full citywide vote.
Okay, and again, that's a breakdown on Democrats and Republicans, because right now the Democrats control the school board here. Now, what's happened in this move? Has it been resolved at this point, or?
Ultimately, the full city council turned down the idea, so it's not going to the ballot. So no traction this year. Who knows if somebody will bring it up again later.
Now, could next year's midterm election year, maybe it could come up again? Somebody could bring that notion back up. What and I would imagine that the board president and the other Democrats on the board aren't real keen on this idea of changing the way it's.
No, they're not. In fact, Richard Barrera and Kevin Beiser, who's also on the school board and a teacher, argued in an op-ed, recent op-ed, argued against it, called it a blatant power grab by city Republicans. But had it gone through, it may have it may have kept somebody like Richard Barrera, who's run 3 times unopposed and amassed a tremendous amount of influence in the school district. It may have kept him from someone like that from doing it again.
Okay.
It definitely
Megan?
felt political. I mean, I think that there's a lot to talk about if you want to talk about accountability. But in this case, I called up Councilman Chris Cate, and I said, you know, what's up with this? And he said, we were having a discussion about this last year. We just wanted to continue the discussion. And I said, well, I don't remember anybody talking about school board limits. And then he said, oh, well, Measure K, we were talking about bringing consistency across. So it felt like a response to the Measure K approval by voters, which basically takes all city runoff elections to November, which benefits Democrats.
All right, well, we'll see going forward. We're out of time, but we'll see how that changes, and maybe by next year, who knows, something else will move in that direction. Well, that does wrap up another week of stories at the KPBS Roundtable. I'd like to thank my guests, Megan Burks of KPBS News, Mario Coran of Voice of San Diego, and Megan Wood of iNewsSource.
Thank you.
A reminder, all the stories we discussed today are available on our website, kpbs.org. I'm Mark Sauer. Thanks for joining us today on the Roundtable.